Oh, wow, it's another episode of the Josh Bloom podcast. I have not changed my name. I have not filed any paperwork. Who knows if there is even anyone in the government to file paperwork to if I wanted to change my name. But luckily, I was not born Robert Zimmerman or whatever Gene Simmons of Kiss's real name is, two Jews who decided that they should change their names because their names would not go over as well as they would if they did not have Jewish names. But even though I am Jewish, my name, Josh Bloom, doesn't scream Jew. It's not Blumenstein or Blumenwitz or Bloomberg. It's just Josh Bloom. So the Josh Bloom podcast, we are back with another episode of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration. I think this is 30 plus minutes of days here. So I will duck out and just let it play, and you can count away, and then I will come back afterwards to say goodbye. So please enjoy, and I will talk to you again in like 3 seconds. Day 18 of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration. I am not a self-help guru. I am just trying to help myself. Yesterday, I was behind a guy who ran 2 stop signs. 1, 2, right after the other. No slowdown. Just saw ahead that there were no cars coming, went right through them. And then he approached a 3rd stop sign, and there were other cars in front of him, and that made him very upset. He was in a rusty truck, and I could see him throwing his arms around wildly and started to honk. And while this behavior absolutely infuriated me, and I definitely had the thought go through my mind to chase him, I did not, because my heart kicked in, and I immediately thought about the rusty truck, and I thought about what brings someone to a moment where they are this upset at the world. And how does that relate to 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration? Well, I will tell you this. In no way am I justifying the insane havoc and awful behavior of the person in question. I have to find some way to understand it and assimilate it in order to live my own life amid what we can all agree is some kind of chaos. And so when I think about him and the loveless upbringing that it has been documented that he has had, and even if you don't believe that, you can believe the fact that his brother died an alcoholic. And people don't just die alcoholics when they are raised in supportive, loving environments. Usually they begin to drink because they are being raised in unsupportive, unloving environments. And again, in no way would I even enter the universe where I would justify some kind of behavior. I have to use the exposure that we now have, the raw evidence that we now have right in our faces of the corruption that is the United States of America, which was founded in corruption. As I've said before, there are words I cannot say here. One of them starts with a G, and one of them starts with an S. One of them is about the fact that the people of this country who were here when the white men arrived were all of a sudden no longer here. And the people who arrived here after the white men arrived were brought here against their will. And so I have to remember the obvious evidence that tells me that to make things right, Black women, Indigenous women need to be running this country. And until such a time that we can make ourselves whole with that reality, we will have to look at the suffering that we are about to endure as inevitable. Day 19 of 1,461 Days of Ignoring the Trump Administration. I am not a self-help guru. I am only trying to help myself. Today is a good day to remind each other that we do not have control over what this administration does. We don't have control over anything. We are hurtling through space on a rock, and the administration that we are dealing with now as American citizens is only there to remind us of how fleeting life really is, and that because we have been given this opportunity to see that so clearly because of the chaos and insanity that is going on around us, we should take advantage of that knowledge and live life to the fullest every single minute with smiles on our faces. And even when we face adversity, look to it as an opportunity to grow and learn and become better and more resilient. You know, this is a person who is so out of touch with reality and so egomaniacal. I sometimes wonder if he would want to initiate some kind of nuclear event that ends humanity simply because he wants to take credit for it. That is the level of insanity that I am talking about here, when you would be also subject to extermination, but thinking, hey, at least I don't know, my ghost to be aware of the fact that I was the one who ended it all instead of someone else. Hey, it could very well be. Think about that for a minute when you are considering what to do with your time and when you are done laughing. And if you are crying over it, please make them tears of joy, because when you understand this, then you can step back and say, hey, I am going to ignore the Trump administration and I am going to spend the time that I reclaim living the very best life that I can and being as happy and joyful and loving to myself and my family and friends as I ever can possibly be. Day 20 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru, but I am trying to help myself. I am speaking fairly quietly today while I am here in this pee, and that is because I have people around me, and this is an example of what we are dealing with today, where we do have to be careful of who might be in our vicinity when we are speaking. This is not a feeling I had just a few years ago, but it is a feeling I have now, and this reminds me of a very important thing, and that is to ignore the Trump administration. And to ignore the Trump administration, I need to ignore the news. Now, I know that it sounds like I'm saying be ignorant, be completely oblivious to what is going on around us. Now, news will filter in, I guarantee you of that. If there are major events, we will find out about them. But the fact of the matter is that getting information, gathering information, looking for information that somehow will appease us or make us feel better about what is happening in the world right now is a fool's errand. It will only make us upset and disappoint and unsatisfied with the day. And I don't want to be unsatisfied with the day. Do you want to be unsatisfied with the day? No, you do not. What you can do, and it is a form of protest, that is why I use the hashtag protest, is to live a joyful, happy life, to love the people around you, because what is happening now is meant to destabilize, meant to bring us down, meant to undermine our resolve to live happy and prosperous and peaceful lives that are directed by our own will. Do not give in to that. Protest by loving those around you. Protest by loving each other. Protest by loving yourself, and keep ignoring the Trump administration. Day 21 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. Guys, I'm getting really good at ignoring the news. I still listen to the same stuff I've always listened to because I like some of those voices. But when I hear those voices saying things that only bring me down and they remind me that this is the only Saturday, February 8th, 2025 I'm ever going to get, I am like Josh. Why would you want to spend your time taking in this information that only upsets you, that only makes you disappointed, that only makes you fearful about the future? We are living in history. Remember in those history books when you'd read or you'd hear the teacher tell you about things that happened in the past and you're like, I can't believe that happened. Well, think about it again, because we are living in history right now. This will be taught 100 years from now, and those kids will be going, wow, that really happened? Well, yes, it did. So while it is happening, while we are in history, history is happening around us. There is nothing we can do about it. So the way you can protest, the way you can do something about it is to love the shit out of yourself and love the shit out of the people around you that you care about. Because the more that you can love yourself and the more that you can love the people around you, the more that they can give it back, the more that you can put it out. And that means living happy and joyous lives without the interference of the Trump administration or really any other source of information that brings us to a place that we don't want to be. So I have to recommend once again to remember the 2 points that I set forth when I began this, which is one, train your mind to let that information kind of glide on in and then glide right back on out, kind of like at a Diddy freak off. And number 2, take that time that you are reclaiming and use it for good. Use it for treating the people around you the way they deserve to be treated and for treating yourself the way you deserve to be treated. I would say that because the chaos and disorder that is going on around us right now, the instability that is going on around us right now, you should use that as a justification to treat yourself better than you ever have treated yourself before. I don't mean to sound like a broken record. I know I'm repeating these same statements every day in many different ways, but it is very important to reiterate that it is important to treat yourself the best that you have ever treated yourself. And if you're going to do that, a good thing to do right out the outset is to ignore the Trump administration. Day 22 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I am simply trying to help myself. Policy, schmolicy, of course, what is going on in this administration in terms of how it could affect our future and the consequences of the decisions that are being made are something we do not yet know. But one thing I do know is that I just don't like this guy. And that is something I've said from the beginning. And I grew up in New York and I haven't liked this guy my entire life. Now, I used to watch that little game show of his because he was an evil villain. Evil villains are fun to watch. You've seen Empire Strikes Back, right? You don't like Darth Vader? Well, you enjoyed that movie anyway, now didn't you? I don't enjoy this person as a decision maker on the behalf of myself, but I did enjoy him with his little game show, and I would love for him to just go back to that game show. But for now, I want to reiterate that it is okay just to not like somebody. We can get into the machinations of everything that's going on, but I have made the decision that I don't want to involve myself in all of that because it is a drag on my soul, it is a drag on my happiness, it is a drag on my ability to enjoy my life and be productive and be a creative human being. So I resign myself and I ask you to do the same. If you don't like this guy, just leave it at that. You cannot like something if you go into a store or you go into a concert, for example, or you just walking down the street and someone gives you a nasty look. Well, it's okay to not like that concert. It's okay to not like that person. Oh my God. It is okay to not like that person behind the counter if they're going to treat you in a way that makes you feel the ick. So why would you accept that in a president of the United States? Well, you wouldn't. So it is a very simple way to deal with this situation, which is to just be like, hey, I just don't like this guy. Every time I hear his voice, every time I hear his words, every time I watch him lie to my face, it just does not feel right. It feels off. And I want to get off of that feeling because that feeling does not serve me. It does not make my life better. And I am here to live the best life I can. Point 1, do not take in this information that dragged you down. Point 2, use that reclaimed time to do good things in the world and help the people around you to feel better and to lift them up in their time of need. If you are a stronger person, then that is the job that you should be doing. To do that at this time, we are looking into a future that seems bleak. In our weakest moments, we need to stop and ignore the Trump administration. Day 23 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru, but I am here to help myself. Well, it is the day after the Super Bowl, so we might as well talk about what we saw there. And I'm not talking about football. I am talking about that incredible halftime performance by Mr. Kendrick Lamar. You know, I don't think this performance was very well received by members of the Trump administration or their supporters, and why would it be? This is art that challenges the heart and minds, and these are not hearts and minds that are looking to be challenged. No, no, no. In fact, they are looking to keep you from having your heart and mind challenged. Rap music is not something that uncultured people who do not appreciate art are ever going to get unless it is delivered to them by someone like Kid Rock, for example. And the other part of this that has to be pointed out is that the message of Mr. Kendrick Lamar, so eloquently stated throughout this performance in both obvious ways and ways that might be considered Easter eggs, or at least require us to think a little deeply, is messaging that is not going to connect with the people that the messaging is about, which in some ways is to our benefit. We get to know what is being said without having to worry about them understanding it, because they never will understand it. And I don't think Mr. Kendrick Lamar thinks they're going to understand it. I think he just wants the audience who is going to understand it to know that he is speaking for us. And boy, oh boy, he sure did, in an incredibly entertaining fashion that gets us off our feet, gets us up off our feet, and to cheer him on. And I think that is the point of great art now, isn't it? It is to physically move us, to emotionally move us, to mentally move us. And boy, oh boy, he did just that. So this is a good day to continue to ignore the Trump administration, because it does give me and probably you a bit of a boost to know that someone out there like Kendrick Lamar is looking out for us and making sure to take the risks that need to be taken in order to keep the Trump administration from infiltrating our lives in ways that undermine our happiness and joy. So keep ignoring the Trump administration, and as you do, take that time that you are reclaiming to do things like Mr. Kendrick Lamar. Take that time to be creative and to be a force for good, and bring art into the world, or bring your creativity to bear on the people in your lives that need to have their hearts and minds lifted. Day 24 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru, but I am trying to help myself. Now, you may have noticed that the background is not the usual background that you might see me in, and you might say, like, Josh, are you in some modern art museum or something like that? Well, no, I am not. I am in a Starbucks. And why the hell would I be in a Starbucks when I am trying to ignore the Trump administration, and Starbucks represents the kind of corporate overlord billionaire takeover that I feel is something that I need to eradicate from my daily consciousness and existence. Well, I am here because it is my birthday, and Starbucks still has this policy of giving away a free birthday drink. So of course I'm going to take advantage of that free birthday drink, although I didn't go overboard. I got a non-fat mocha frap with no whip. And why do I do that? That is because I don't want to be overindulgent, and I don't want to be an overindulgent when I'm trying to ignore the Trump administration, because the Trump administration is about overindulgence. So I don't want to take part in that at all. And so I get a more reasonable beverage. But what does this actually have to do with ignoring the Trump administration? You would think if I'm going to Starbucks, that's not ignoring the Trump administration, that's buying into the Trump administration. Well, the fact of the matter is that even in a Starbucks, there are people here, and even though they are probably mistreated people who are overworked and underpaid, they are people. Now, they did not write on my drink, which is the new Starbucks old policy that is new again, because they think that they can bring back customers with this sort of fake, phony attempt at connecting with us. Well, the fact of the matter is that if this cup was written on, or even if it wasn't, a person made this drink, and I acknowledge that, and that is what ignoring the Trump administration is about. It is about connecting with people one-on-one, the loved ones in our life, the friends in our life, or the barista, who is a person who gets up and comes in here and makes your drink. While connecting with them on a one-on-one level is what ignoring the Trump administration is all about for these next 1,461 days. And the second part of that is to take that reclaimed time that we are not spending on absorbing news and absorbing information that undermines our joy and happiness. And by getting that out of our consciousness, we are using that time to be creative and do wonderful, creative, loving things for our fellow citizens, our family, and our neighbors. And that is what I want to continue to encourage you to do as we proceed through 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. If you have a free birthday drink coming to you, well, I say come get it. And then, you know what? Don't come back here again until your next birthday. That's what I'm going to do. You do it too. Day 25 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. I have a confession to make today on day 25 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. That is, I have slipped. I have found myself slipping into watching too much news, into taking into too much information, into getting myself into that doom scrolling loop of paying attention to the Trump administration, every little move that's being made. And that is something that I am grateful for. And why am I grateful for that? Because it shows the contrast that I need to see in order to have the kind of resolve that it will take to ignore the Trump administration for 1,461 days. And so here on day 25, I am confessing to that slippage. And I am also resolving and resigning myself to turning that around. I find that when I go out in the world, I do not see the kind of discrepancy between the good and the bad that we are shown online. Now, while those pieces of information that I am taking in, which I believe I should at least be aware of, when I am taking in that information, it is not like I am thinking like this is false or that this is not to be paid attention to or that I should stick my head into the sand, because I do not. I believe it is vital information, but the reality is, and cannot be denied in any way, shape, or form, that taking in this information is a drag. It is unpleasant and unsatisfying, and it takes me away from enjoying this bit of time I have been granted here on planet Earth. And so I will once again remind myself, and if you're watching, then I am reminding you as well, that number one, I want to take in less of this information, because there is not a goddamn thing I can do about it. If the knock is going to come in my door, the knock's going to come in my door, and I will be chagrined if I get that knock and I have not spent the days preceding enjoying the life that I have been granted here on planet Earth. And two, I want to take this reclaimed time and use it for more creative endeavors. I want to use it to treat the people in my life the best way I know how. And I want to use that reclaimed time to do good in the world that I may not have thought of to do, if not for 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. Day 26 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. Now, I have been getting comments in my comment section from people that tell me they don't have the luxury that I have to be ignoring the Trump administration. They think I have some kind of luxury. Well, if they just went to my bio, they would see what? What would they see? They would see a Jewish star there. They would see a gay pride flag, because I am Jewish and gay, and I have been subject to bigotry my entire life. So while you may see a white man who you think has privilege, I am not a white man who has privilege. And I don't know what color you are, if you're any color at all. I don't know what gender you are, if you consider yourself any kind of gender at all. But I'll tell you one thing, we are the same. And the reason we are the same is because we are subject to the whims of these rich motherfuckers who want to take advantage of us and use us and take every little bit of our money and take every bit of our lives. Because what do we do all day? We get up and we go to those jobs, or we do whatever we have to do in terms of just spending money that goes right to the pockets of these rich guys, these powerful guys. And it's mostly guys, but there's a few women too. There's probably a few of them who don't consider themselves any gender, because they have the privilege to do that, even though they're taking that privilege away from other people. So that's what we do every day. We just put money into their pockets. And so when I choose not to pay attention, when I choose to ignore the Trump administration 1,461 days. I am just simply taking my life back from them. I am saying to you and I am saying to the world, I will not be subject to the whims of these people who want to do nothing but destroy me and do not give a flying fuck about my happiness, joy, prosperity, or time on earth, except for what they can squeeze out of me and what they can squeeze out of you. You know what the difference is between a Southern white male MAGA follower and a New York City based trans woman? There is nothing, there is no difference. They want to keep those kinds of people fighting with each other. They want those people to think they are different, but they're not different because they are both just cogs in the wheel for the rich and the powerful to take advantage of. They really actually don't care who you support or what you do, what your political affiliation is, or what you do in your bedroom. All they care about is what you do out of that bedroom in the workplace for them to earn money. So I am going to, number one, continue to ignore the Trump administration for 461 days by taking back my time from absorbing this nonsensical information and behavior that's being put out into the world. And I am going to, number two, use that time to be productive and happy and give love and guidance and support and optimism to the people in my life who might need that. You do it too, if you want. Day 27 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. Well, day 27, the 27 Club, ever heard of it? So many musicians passed at the age of 27, and I don't know if this administration is going to pass at the age of 27, but I would welcome it because it is a disruptive force, unlike those artists who enriched our lives with their fine art. Go look it up. I won't name them right now because I do not want those names associated with the Trump administration. So as we enter day 27, I have to reiterate that I'm not looking for this administration to fail. I'm not looking for it to perish like a member of the 27 Club. On its face, I would love to see them succeed at making our lives better, but I think we have all arrived at the reality that that is probably not going to happen because of the very swift dismantling of everything that we know about the government of this country. Now, other things we know about this government and the history of the United States is a deep-seated corruption. So maybe rooting out that corruption is something that does need to be done, but not at the expense of our feeling of stability, not at the expense of our feeling of self-worth. And that is taking me back to my fundamental issue with the Trump administration, is that these are people who just kind of, dicks, people who you would not want to hang around because in your time of need, in your time of wanting some kind of understanding from your fellow human being, that will not be provided. And why would that not be provided? Because these are, in my estimation, people who do not have that ability. And why don't they have that ability? Well, I am no psychiatrist. I am no psychologist. I cannot get into the deep-seated realities that each of these people brings to the table. And so I must ignore the Trump administration. Otherwise, I will be subject to these undermining and nefarious behaviors. And while I'm ignoring the Trump administration, just going back to our initial philosophy behind this entire project, that is to take back our time that we would normally be spending worried about what this administration is going to do to our lives, and use that time to love ourselves and love one another and make great meals and take great walks and make great things that enrich our lives. Let's do that. Day 28 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm only trying to help myself. Reclaim your time and reclaim your mind. Have you ever been on one of those calls where, let's say you're trying to cancel your cell phone service, for example, or just trying to change it, and they lead you down that maze of press one, press two, enter this, enter that, press pound, et cetera, et cetera. Finally, you get frustrated and you just press 0000000 to get to a person. And when you finally get to that person, what is the first thing they do? They ask you for that same goddamn information again. And by that time, you've been on that call 20 minutes, correct? Well, that is the same thing as what the Trump administration does to us. It wastes our time to pay attention to it, because when we are calling up to change or cancel that cell phone service, chances are it is service we really did not need in the first place. I tried to cancel service on a second phone I happen to have. And after I got through that entire arduous call, guess what happened? They sent me another bill a month later. And so I had to get on the phone with them again and go through the whole process again. And I don't want to do that. We were not asked to be here. We did not ask to be put on this earth, did we not? Did you fill out a form saying, I would like to be born? No, you did not. You were put here. I was put here against my will. And if I have to live here, then I want to live here in a way that satisfies my soul, that makes me happy, that makes me feel as if the fact that I was forced to be alive had some kind of meaning. And to do that in this current awful environment where we are under these sort of people who I said doge almost, because that goddamn word, who the hell knew that word 6 weeks ago? But now we have a word that they have forced upon us. I don't want to know that word. Okay. These are people who have come into our lives only to make them more difficult, only to devalue them, only to make us feel as if, wow, I really don't want to be here now, do I? I was forced to be here and I do not want to be here. Well, that is not an option. We have to persevere. We have to survive. So, one, we don't get led through mazes of pressing buttons on behalf of this Trump administration. And two, once we are reclaiming that time by not paying attention to it, by not absorbing this information, by not taking in all this news of every little song and dance that they do to try to distract us, and we use that time to do good. We use that time to spend not on cell phones, but in the lives and minds and hearts of the people we love. 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. Day 29 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I am not a self-help guru. I'm just trying to help myself. Reclaim your mind, reclaim your time. Those are all catchphrases that I just want to put out there and maybe get into your consciousness so that it can take the place of this awful and disturbing and upending stream of information that is coming out of the Trump administration. I want to let you know on day 29 that 29 out of 1,461, well, that is about 2%, which means we are 2% through the Trump administration. Now, I know so many people say, like, well, there won't be another election, or what happens if he runs again and they change the Constitution? That is exactly the kind of thing that we should not be thinking about, because it does not serve us. This is a time in life to get to know ourselves better. We are given permission by this atrocity to get to know ourselves better. It is telling us ignore. It is saying to us ignore, because it is constantly feeding us information that we don't want, because it does not make our lives better. There is nothing that you can get that is better. In fact, I would posit to say that even if you were the biggest supporter of the Trump administration, I don't think the Trump administration itself wants to hear about what the Trump administration is doing, because it is boring as hell. So what I would suggest is to take what is going on right now in the world as permission to get to know yourself better. Learn everything about yourself that you ever wanted to learn. Take the time to really be mindful and examine and understand what it is that makes you, you, because now is the moment to do so. It is always the moment to do so. Every single moment that goes by is another opportunity to have examined yourself and who you are. And so I suggest that you do that very thing. Reclaim your time, reclaim your mind, get to know yourself better. And as you do, take what you learn and use it to make yourself a better person each and every day so that you can be strong and positive and influential on those around you that you love. Because to do that is a thing that will make the world a better place as you continue to ignore the Trump administration. We're 2% through it, baby. Day 30 of 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. I'm not a self-help guru, just trying to help myself. Well, day 30, wow, a month. It sure feels like a hell of a lot longer than a month. But you know what? I have this feeling today that things could just be okay. You know why? Because corrupt people provide contrast. Corrupt people provide contrast. And I am thinking about what's going on in New York as a New Yorker with this Eric Adams kind of stuff. Now, I know he tried to pull a little bit of shenanigans and try to get out and weasel out and scurry out from under all the trouble that he has caused for himself. And it's not looking like that's going to happen. And you know why? Just because the guy's corrupt, and generally people don't want corrupt people in their midst, and certainly don't want corrupt people telling them how to live or running their lives. Now, does this mean that somehow this world's made up of the good and the bad? Well, we know that's just not true. And if you believe that, you are fooling yourself, because we all have good and we all have bad. But those good and bad qualities come in shades of gray. And when we see the ultra corrupt acting corrupt so brazenly and so openly and so willingly in violation of our values and our morals, well, that gives us an opportunity to not only call that out and push up against that and fight it and reject it, but it also asks us to look within ourselves to say, hey, if I can recognize corruption, then there must be something going on with me. The old, it takes one to know one. Well, as I said, we all have things about ourselves that we want to improve. And when we have these corrupt people around us trying to impose themselves in our lives, trying to tell us that they know right from wrong and we don't, well, it gives us an opportunity to better ourselves. And that is exactly what we're doing when we are spending 1,461 days of ignoring the Trump administration. Let's just see what happens. Hey, that was a good one. Thank you for tuning in. It has been quite a ride so far. I cannot believe it has only been a month. But as I said, we are 2% through, and even a little more now, so isn't that nice? I think we'll get there. I think everything will be okay, or at least I am saying that because I am scared beyond belief. I'll be back again next week. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to go to superjews.com, where you can visit me for everything and everywhere. Please subscribe, comment, and like as many times as you possibly can, because it actually helps. See you next week.